Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show, Ari Dobner, who's in charge of Clearshift's business development and operation. Ari, start by telling us, what is Clearshift?
Clearshift is a international payments company that services businesses, nonprofits, and helps them make payments in cross currency. So importers and exporters from Israel, for example, who need to make payments or receive payments from their counterparties, we can do it for them, and we compete with the banks. We found a way to do it that can both save money and simplify.
So this is a long answer to a short question. Are you what we would just call a money changer, or is there more to it?
No, we don't like to be. Well, we share the same license as a money changer. Our business model is very different. We don't have a storefront. We're not in the business of lending money for a check, forwarding money. We are probably comparable to what people call a cheder iskaot, which exists at banks, and there's some non-banks. But Western Union Business Solutions, that would be a peer of ours, or OzForex in Australia, or HiFX in England. While those sound like companies that deal with FX investing, which we stay farthest possible away from, we deal with real business payments. Those are the types of companies that we see ourselves as a peer with, as opposed to your local money changer who has a booth and dealing in cash and checks and stuff.
So Western Union is a name that I think a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with. Is that the same type of business that you're in?
Well, Western Union has a unit called Western Union Business Solutions, and they basically service the business end. They're not the, Mexican worker in the U.S. Who needs to wire money back home and walks into a booth, hands off some cash, and sends it back home. And their deal with Western Union Business Solutions is actually a competitor that bought the two largest companies that handle something around $10 billion a year in payments for some 30,000 customers around the world in 15 different countries. We're looking to be there. All right, starting small. We're starting in Israel. We believe it's a good market to start in, but that's where we see ourselves being, and we have a unique business model that we think will help us get there quickly.
One of the things that you focus on your website is how Clearshift focuses on maximum transparency. First of all, tell us, what does that mean, and how does that compare to the banks?
Okay, well, banks have minimum transparency, especially when it comes to currency conversion. People don't know how to answer a very simple question. I sit down with a client and I say, just tell me and give me a percentage number. What does it cost you to receive dollars from the U.S. and convert it into shekels? I've never gotten somebody who can on the spot give me an answer in percentage terms. That's a lack of transparency. They've managed to create 3 different fees. They've managed to bury a lot of hidden costs into the rate, and nobody knows which question to ask to even figure out where the money's disappearing from their account. We've come up with a system for pricing that both has a transparent rate source, meaning the rate comes from someplace you can point to. I didn't just invent it for you at the moment. It has a transparent fee structure, meaning you didn't have to call me and ask me, what are you going to charge me? It's what we charge everybody, okay? And it's out there on the website. It's out there, on the first phone call. It's not something we need to negotiate. And we also have transparency in terms of our operations, which if we have a chance, maybe we'll discuss. The end result is a customer knows in advance what it's going to cost them for real, what we call a true cost. So when you ask a customer of Clearshift, what does it cost you to move money from the United States to Israel or the reverse? They'll answer instantly. It costs me 0.25%. They know how to answer that question because that's what we've done. We've eliminated all the hidden variables and hidden costs and made it very clear. Go ahead.
Good. We're talking with Ari Dobner, who is in charge of business development as well as operations for Clearshift, which is, I would guess, as he described it, more than a money changer. He's been telling us about the model of the business and maybe even some of the competitors. And Ari, we've been talking about banks and kind of comparing you to a bank. Is that a fair comparison, or are they just at a different level in terms of customer security and these types of transactions?
Well, one of the greatest challenges we have is what you mentioned. Oh, practically every customer who we sit in front of, and we sit in front of them before they open an account with us, ask the question, how safe is my money? It will be with you for 24 hours, sometimes for more, depending on what they're doing. And what happens with my money during that period? How do I know you don't vanish with the money or worse? Okay, and so the answer of a bank is I have an $80 billion balance sheet, and you know it. I've been in business for 50 years, and you trust that, and you're not even going to read my balance sheet, but that's what you're going to go by, and that's fair enough for a bank. That's definitely, an answer they should be giving, and it's somewhat correct, although nobody checks out the balance sheets of the banks, and some of them are questionable. But we don't have that answer. We haven't been in business 50 years, and we don't have an $80 billion balance sheet. What we do is we simply segregate client funds from company funds so that essentially the funds of the client never enter our pocket. We put them in a segregated pool, which is with other customer funds, but it's not with anyone else's money. And that pool always has exactly what we owe customers at any given moment.
Sorry, Ari, let's clarify. You said it's in a separate pool. It's not with anyone else's money? I don't know.
No, they're all the customers' funds are together. It's not with our money.
And it's in a special account. Is this like a special trust account?
Yeah, well, it's a two-tiered account. There's one account which is where the funds are received and paid from, and then any overnight funds are swept into a special trust account. We've hired the second largest institutional trustee company in Israel, Mishmeret. They typically do large bond offerings for like Bezek. They are our trustee. They get a daily report, and this is the transparency I mentioned earlier about our operations, showing exactly what the customer balances are and what funds we have in the various accounts, and any balance that's overnight gets swept into an account in their name. So there's total transparency from their perspective on behalf of all of our customers. You can call them and say, Clearshift is telling me, I have $50,000. Is that what they're telling you too? They can check it, and they'll get an answer. And they see that everything is balanced on a given day, that the funds are always there, so we're always covered. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be, because if we don't use it except to pay something for a client who's already given us money, then there should always be exactly in that account what we receive from customers minus what we've taken out and paid for customers. That's what we strive to do. In addition, we have an insurance policy to make sure that everybody is acting the way they're supposed to. So if there's any dishonesty, embezzlement, God forbid, anything like that, we have a Lloyd's of London insurer to insure us against an incident, God forbid, like that.
So let's talk about something that maybe our listeners have heard about, which was just a couple of years ago, one of the more popular change places and money conversion places that, although they had a storefront, people also wired the money and they got the money deposited to their bank until one night when they didn't. What happened there, and is your setup different from theirs?
Well, I'll tell you what from hearsay, what I think they did, okay, and I'll leave out any criminal accusations. I'll just talk about, operational standards. From what I understood, they were operating a bank, which means people deposited money. Some people apparently even received interest on their money. That's what I understood. And naturally, that interest came from somewhere. They were investing the money. And so that's a bank. People deposit, they invest, and hopefully their income is enough to cover what they're paying their investors, and it's there for them when they want to withdraw. Well, to do that, you're supposed to be a bank, and you're supposed to have minimum capital requirements and be regulated like a bank. They do exactly what I told you we don't do, which means they took funds that were customer money and invested it in real estate. Again, this is what I understood from reading about it. I can't say I know this firsthand. That is exactly what creates risk to customers. Their money's not there. It's in some real estate investment, which you have the upside, but the client has the downside. That's not okay. And in Europe, you can't do that. A European license requires you to have what we have over here. It's called a safeguard account. Israel doesn't require it. The U.S. doesn't require it, but we do it anyway. And that's the model we're using, is the European safeguard account model. And that's what guarantees customer safety and isolates our credit risk as a business from customer funds.
Okay, so let's go back to something you were talking about earlier, which was not only the known fees, but the way that the transaction happens. Now, in Israel, one of the things a lot of people find very confusing is they go into the bank, for example, and they say, well, what rate will you give me? And they start talking about the Shariat Sig or some other conversion rate. Could you explain what these are?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion, but basically, the rates in the market are it's almost like stocks, except there's no exchange. So the banks publish what they're at any given moment, what they're willing to pay or for a dollar or receive for a dollar, and the Reuters and Bloomberg and various companies collect it, and ultimately it might make it onto a Globe's page, and it might be pretty accurate within a few minutes. In fact, on our website, we pay Morningstar quotes to give us those numbers. That's what a dollar is worth at any given moment. It's called the bid rate. It's called the trading rate. It's called a lot of things. It's not the yatzig, but people call it the yatzig. The yatzig is once a day. The Bank of Israel takes that rate, samples it for about 2 hours, and then comes out with a rate that nobody can really manipulate and says, this is the indicative rate for today. If you want to use it on your bookkeeping and your contracts, we're going to give a free service to the public. This is the rate. We use that rate for the simple reason that it's neutral, it can't be manipulated, anyone can check up on it. It's a singular rate, which means whether you are buying or selling, you get the exact same rate. It has no built-in markup. Banks have like a buy rate and a sell rate that confuse people and allow them to slip in extra, significant extra profits. So that's Yitzig, what the Bank of Israel announces once a day. We use the next Yitzig, which means every single transaction that we do, customers have no idea what the rate is. They simply agree, and we agree, that it will be whatever the Bank of Israel announces as the next rate. That's what it's going to be.
You mean the next day? So if someone comes to you at 2 in the afternoon and they haven't published a rate yet, it's just whatever the next time they publish that rate is?
Well, up till 1 o'clock, which is about when they start calculating the rate, it will be that day's rate, which gets announced at 3:45. Okay? Usually, you don't have people walking in it's not a cash business. So I usually receive a wire from the United States overnight, and I know that they want it converted the following day. So we'll wait till 3:45, and it'll be converted at that rate that the Bank of Israel publishes, and then we'll send the money on to the client. Similarly, we have importers. They need to make payments to their vendors in the United States. It happens later in the day when the bank's open, so they'll wire us money in the morning. They'll wait till 3:45. The rate is announced for the day. That's what we'll convert it out, and we'll deliver the dollars onward. Okay, that's what we use. So it's beneficial to both parties. Nobody has an advantage of asymmetric information where I know more about the market. People ask me, why don't you use yesterday's Yitzig so I know exactly what I'm getting? I said, well, if the rates in the market today are 350 and yesterday's Yitzig was 340, okay, depending on whether you're buying or selling, that might be a very good idea, might not be a very good idea. It's a stale piece of information. So we're not going to take advantage of someone. Clearly, I'm not going to do it if it's bad for me, but I'm not going to do it if it's bad for them either. It's just not fair. It's taking advantage of them. So we agree that whatever the Bank of Israel announces, it's fair and neutral. I have no advantage over it. Over a customer, and so that's what we're going to, all of our transactions are that, which means as opposed to a bank where, let's say let's take Bank Leumi or Bank Mizrahi, 1,000 or 10,000 customers traded dollar shekel that day, they probably were 10,000 different rates that they got. I'm not joking, okay? Whereas with Clearshift, every customer on the same day received the exact same rate whether they were buying or selling. That's the difference.
All right. Very interesting. It's certainly a refreshing business model. Quite a lot to learn about. Ari, we're just about out of time, but tell me in the last few seconds, how can people follow you and learn more about your work?
Well, they can certainly call us, or they can go to our website, clearshiftinc.com, read up on us a bit, and hopefully, if they're legitimate businesses, they'll inquire. We'll send a salesperson to talk to them and explain to them and help them open an account. One of the things we don't do is handle, funny payments, which a lot of money changers have a kind of a license to do. We deal with legitimate business who are making regular payments to suppliers, or the reverse, and everything else we just put up a sign at the door that says, if you got anything to hide, just turn around. Don't talk to us.
Sounds great. All right, listen, Ari Dobner from Clearshift, thanks so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with international investment expert Doug Goldstein. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, go to www.goldsteinongelt.com or write to Doug directly at doug@profile-financial.com.